And away we go. Welcome back to another episode of the Pickup Meeting. Here we are. How you doing, Brody?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Pickup meeting. I'm good. The pickup meeting with Kevin and Brody. I forget that we maybe don't introduce ourselves, but if people are listening, it's on the placard that you're listening on. So I hope you're checking that out.
Yeah. Or what should it be? Brody and Kevin?
Oh, it probably is Brody and Kevin.
Yeah, it is.
Because
we read left to right on the picture. Right, it's my head on the left, and your mug on the right.
Two good-looking guys. What are you going to do about this? We're so good-looking that we just put silhouettes on our image.
Yeah. I did radio for so long, and they told me I had a face for radio. I always thought that was kind of mean.
So here we are. It's listen. We have to admit that we are massive sports fans. Sports fans. And we have a guest today that I think is also a massive sports fan. But before we bring him on, I wanted to get into this just a little bit. That I'm so tired. We're both Cardinal fans.
Massive
Cardinal fans. And I have to say, I probably have it a little easier now that I'm in Arkansas, that I don't get as much of the Cardinal Cubs banter. But what is happening right now? You know, the Cardinals are terrible, and you're in Cardinal Cub territory. How are you surviving and handling this with the Cubs being pretty decent for being a Cubs team, and then being a Cardinals fan in that area?
It's unpleasant, to be fair. I would say that the mixture of Cardinals Cubs fans here in Central Illinois has surprised me. There are lots of Cardinals fans, so there are folks to commiserate with. So that's nice. And we kind of forget about the White Sox, which, when I lived in DeKalb in the early 2000s, I kind of adopted the White Sox as my American League team. And they're still terrible, even after winning the World Series in 2005. They've not been good since then, I don't think. At least not to the World Series. But they've got a young guy that's playing shortstop now that's from my neck of the woods. And I've kind of started to watch them now, and it's been fun watching him be really good. Colson Montgomery is his name. He's playing shortstop, and we're spoiled as Cardinals fans. Let's be honest. The last 25 years have been pretty good. I mean, come on.
Oh, we're for sure spoiled. And that's the thing. You kind of have to take it with a grain of salt that you're spoiled. For fans of other teams, when I've talked to them, the moment they find out you're a Cardinal fan, they always say, I don't want to hear anything until you haven't been to the playoffs or a World Series in like 10 years. And it's like, well, we're getting closer to that. We've been pretty bad, but hopefully better days are ahead. I can't help but think in this time frame as fall approaches and the playoffs are coming and the World Series that there should be some really great times for Cardinal fans. And we have really great memories of this time frame, but it's just bad. You know what's not bad, though?
What's not bad?
Donuts. Donuts make everything better. Do you like that transition?
I do. It was fantastic. Donuts do make everything better, Kevin. You sent me something about Krispy Kreme doing this special donut with Harry Potter. Like, is that right?
Yeah, and you are a very vocal Harry Potter hater. We actually lost listeners from your Harry Potter hate. But what's happening, I think, at this moment at Krispy Kreme is you can go and get donuts that are for each of the houses of Harry Potter.
Yes.
And then they have when it's a sorting hat that you cut into, and it's got some kind of filling that is the color of what your house is. And it just leaves me in with this thought that donuts are great, and there's really not a bad donut. And I think you embrace that in your life, that donuts are great.
Yeah, everything you said there, I did not understand, except that the donuts have filling in them, and that's good. Donuts should have filling in them. Like my favorite donut is the Cherry Bismarck from Donut Bank in my hometown, or the Lemon Bismarck here at Grove Street Bakery, which is about 90 seconds from my house, which is very dangerous. But Kevin, did you know, growing up in high school, my nickname, and I had lots of nicknames, but one I really liked was
Let's get to the lots of nicknames first.
What
was the one we're going to talk about, though?
No, the Donut Man. I was the Donut Man. I worked for the yearbook, and the last 2 years I worked for the yearbook, the only fundraising we did was every Tuesday and Thursday morning. I bought 6 dozen glazed donuts from the donut bank and 6 dozen chocolate long johns from the donut bank, and I brought them to the cafeteria and sold them before school.
See, I remember this story, but in my mind I had it that you were like fundraising for your own efforts. Like this was Brody's gas bank, right? The donut guy was just raising some gas funds.
Yeah, for the Chevy Chevette, the 1981 Chevy Chevette, 4-door. That was the car I was driving.
You know, I was thinking back to the annual conference for NACADA that we attended, and pre the conference getting going, we went on the donut tour.
Oh,
do you remember this?
It was so great.
God, I don't know.
That was one of my favorite NACADA conference memories. Was that Portland 2022?
Yeah, but it was Portland, and the donut experience was magical.
It was so good.
I'm just now I'm lost in it, and our guest is really going to struggle to overcome the fact that we're this hungry and only talking about donuts.
Yeah, let's be honest. Donuts are amazing.
They are. All right, we ready to get rolling?
Let's do it.
I didn't know if you wanted to like try to sell our audience any donuts and do some fundraising now.
I'm good.
All right, I'm super excited. We have a guest that's with us today. We're joined by Todd Burrell, regional representative for the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. Todd's been in the leader in the admissions and enrollment world for more than 20 years. We're not going to go any further than that because then you can start to like guess ages. Serving in various leadership roles. He's a recognized statewide leader for servant leadership, advocate for students, families, and the profession of admissions. Welcome, Todd Burrell.
Welcome. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Brody. Great to be here and looking forward to this. This is my first ever podcast, so I haven't done this before, so bear with me as hopefully I can contribute and have some fun. Definitely based upon the intro, it's going to be a lot of fun.
That's great. So is this whole first ever experience, is there some nerves to this experience?
Yes, there really is. There's like technology. Hopefully it works because, that's not my expertise. And then I'm like, gosh, what am I going to say? And listening to podcasts before, I'm like, how do I follow this? How do I follow you all? And then the individuals that you had on. So yeah, hopefully I can contribute, but I do tell you this, I feel like I'm gonna have a lot of fun.
That's great.
You've put a lot of pressure on yourself. It's just a pickup meeting, my man. We're just having a conversation. This is going to be fantastic.
It will be. I'm ready. I'm looking forward to it. I love pickup meetings some days. Sometimes in life when I was in my other roles and you'd walk through, as I heard you say in the previous one, at Starbucks, and that would be the pickup meeting. I'd be like, oh, maybe I'll just avoid coffee today because I don't really want a pickup meeting.
So the pickup meeting gone bad. Like we haven't talked about that, Kevin. That's a good topic for sure.
Right. Oh, they would how's the numbers? Oh, I don't want to talk about those today. Oh, your students doing good.
All of a sudden you become a tea person or a vending machine person. I'm not going to Starbucks today.
Yeah.
No more pickup meetings.
So Todd, we mentioned, aspects of an illustrious career where you've done a lot of really wonderful things. And when you think back on your journey here, like think back to, as many students are this fall, beginning a college journey as that 17, 18, 19-year-old. When we go back to 17, 18, 19-year-old Todd, what did you think we were like? Could you imagine that this was going to be your career where you were a director of admissions at an institution? You're helping students recruit. Like, how did we get here?
Yeah, what a journey. And I will say this, I feel so fortunate in my career to have had the opportunity to do what I have done and have had the mentors that have helped me out in my many roles. I can't, there's nowhere to begin to name them all, but when I was 17, 18, I always will share, I was thinking about this, before coming on, thinking, what can I share? What can I talk about? I was a first gen student. I didn't even know what first gen meant, back then, 1988, graduated from high school. So there you go. There's my age. And I was like, first gen, didn't know it, but I knew I was the first in my family to go. Now, I will tell you, my parents are awesome. They did not go to college, but they pushed education and said, continue what you want to do, whether that be a 2-year, 4-year technical, do something. And I really appreciate that. So they were very smart, even though they didn't go to college. And so I wanted to go to college. Now, I wanted a 4-year, and I had that vision of I really wanted to get away from my hometown. I grew up in a small town, love my hometown, but wanted to get away. And now that was the vision of 10, 12 hours. Well, I was very much an introvert. So I don't at that time. So I was like, that's too far, because if I need to get back home, I should probably limit that. So about 2 to 4 hours. And so I looked at my choices, and I applied to a local university near where I'm from. And I applied to another institution that I ended up working for many years. And then I applied to a small private, and then a local community college. So I did 4 applications. I remember it. And I really wanted to go to the small private. Long story short, in the end, it worked out, but not after much struggle and really waiting to see if that total financial aid package was there and the cost was going to be relevant for what I could do and for my family. Because my mom and dad said, you're the oldest of 4. We can't spend all of our money on one. We got 3 others. And so that was
when you should have said, I'm first. I get to spend the money right now.
Right? That was exactly my situation too. I was the oldest of 4. And my folks basically said, we got you for 1 year. And then after that, good luck.
We know there's a doctor coming behind you, Brody, right?
Yeah. That's why. Yeah,
right, a real doctor, right? Somebody that helps people, actually helps people.
No, it was so true. So I remember this. I went to the college reps, and this is what I do. I'm going to do it later today. And then this fall again, you go to the high school and you visit with students. A rep came from the institution that I went to, and I wanted to go there. And so back then, again, no internet, no online application, and brought the application home. I had to go to work right away. So I laid it out on the table. And then I went to work, came back home, and I was going to fill it out, and I couldn't find it. And I was like, well, where'd this go? So next morning I asked my mom and dad, did you do something with my application? I said, we threw it away. That school's going to be too much for you. And I'll never forget that. And they were right. We didn't know at the time, but when you see the cost, it's just like, that's not going to happen. How are we going to make that affordable? And not understanding financial aid and scholarships. Again, in the end, it worked out. And I was very happy. I was very excited to be going there. And it was a wonderful 4 years. And it really was the beginning of then the admissions career. Not knowing, again, that 17, 18-year-old that was going to end up going to college. I knew I wanted to, didn't know where. 4 years of great experience that then led into the admissions career that I started in 92. I looked this up because I was like, I know the date, June 22nd of 1992. Was my first ever admissions day. And since then, I've only been off, besides your holidays and your sick days, but I only been off 2 weeks. And I did that before I took this current role here at the U of I. I took 2 weeks off before I started my new job. But other than that, I went from a Friday right into a Monday job. And so it's been awesome and a great career. And I just feel so fortunate and thankful for the many people that helped me out along there and all the opportunities I've been given.
That's great, Todd. We've looked at your materials, right? You've served in a lot of leadership roles across Illinois, Missouri, nationally. What originally drew you to admissions work, and what keeps you passionate today?
Oh my gosh, I think it's the same thing that drew a lot of people to admissions work. It didn't quite know what I wanted to do. And I had to go to my career counselor, the one that they say, don't come to me in the senior year, second semester when you're looking for a job. Well, I did. That's what I did. And, totally shouldn't do that, but I did. And they're like, well, you really like this school, right? And I'm like, yeah. They said, well, admissions might have some openings. Why don't you do an intern or go talk to them and see if you can volunteer? And that's what I did. I volunteered. I didn't get paid. I did tours and I did work within the admissions office my senior year, second semester. I wish I would have gotten involved much sooner in my college career because I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And it was just volunteer, but it was a lot of fun giving tours and doing that. And I realized this could be something I want to do. Well, then an opening came up, a couple openings, and I was just really fortunate that I got offered a job the day before graduation. So I could tell my family, see, it paid off. Now in admissions, my mom and dad were not quite understanding because, I went to a private school.
Sure.
And in college admissions, the pay is always discussed. In higher ed, the pay is always discussed. And my mom and dad looked at me and said, you went to school for this? And they didn't quite understand what I was going to do. Like, what are you going to do? And your pay is going to be this. I said, Mom, I remember on graduation, because we had a discussion before I graduated, like, this is what I want to do. And I got to stay in the community that I really enjoyed being in for the past 4 years. And that was just awesome. And then again, who would have thought, though, at that first job that I started at, that yes, the pay wasn't that great, but I loved it. And I really wanted to just continue to do it, that I would have had the chance to go on and do the many positions that I have at now the fourth institution that I've been at. It's just all the places I've been at, I will talk very positively about and just have enjoyed each and every one.
The interesting thing, and listener, if you think about the journey that you take in your career, whether that's in admissions or advising or wherever in higher education, there's rungs that you go through, right? There's a ladder that essentially is there, and you start off in some frontline positions, and then you move to an assistant director, or coordinator, an associate director, and director. And Todd and I had the opportunity. We were both directors in an enrollment management division at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and we got to know each other there. And I keep reflecting upon some of the conversations that we had. So don't worry, Todd, it's not going anywhere that it shouldn't. But we're going to focus on work today, not any extracurricular things. But I think about that time frame of you being a director of a regional campus and the work and the things you were doing, and making that decision to decide to do something else in your career. Can you talk through some of that and some of the reasoning for that? Because I think that people get to this point where they think, well, I've become a director, I should either want to stay a director, or I should want to be a vice president, or I should want, but that's not always the case, right? And you did 20 something years of being a director and decided to do something different. I think the audience would love to hear some of that thinking, because I think that's part of a lot of people's journey.
Oh, it was something that you're right, Kevin. I've thought about this even before, taking on this role, is what would I want to do next? And I feel like always in my career, I really enjoyed the space as director, because I felt like at that level, yes, you were in a lot of meetings, strategy, planning, always doing that. I enjoyed that part. You were managing staff, and that was kind of my background. I had a management degree. Again, I went to college for a management degree and kind of got to use it in college admissions and working, develop young staff. And I really appreciate that. And working with those that had been in the office for some time, that all their expertise and taking that all in. So it was a lot of fun in that director role. But then after 20 years, it was like, okay, what's my next step? I felt like, okay, what is going to be my next step? And in my role, I had the chance to meet a lot of people and talk with them over time. And when you're in that director space, it is a great space. And then getting involved in professional development. I know Brody mentioned, I have had the great chance to do a lot of that. Yeah. So you talk to people, not just in the state that you're in, but nationally, and you get to hear their stories. And there were a few individuals that were saying, I did the director, and they've gone on to say, now I was able to maybe step back and get back to the front line. And that kept standing out, is what got me interested in admissions, or continued the spark in admissions. And it literally was working with the students and families. And in that director role, and you all know this, you all are in key leadership positions, you can't interact as much with students because your time is spent doing so much else. And that was the one thing I was lacking. And I would definitely block out my calendar. I would never say, today I would go to a staff member and I would say, when I was at SAE, I'm going to do your presentation today. Now, just one. But it was like, I gave them a break, but then got me into the front line so I could kind of hear from the families what was going on. I loved that. I would take phone shift for an hour in our office, and they would be like, you're the director, why are you doing that? I'm like, I got to hear what's happening, what's going on. Plus, I think that's where you learn the most. You get questions. You're like, I don't know. Okay, let me figure this out. So I really like that. And when University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, I had this position that they had been talking about for years. And I never forget, one of my colleagues, Dr. Andy Boers, he was director at U of I. I talked about creating a regional rep in the metropolitan area around SIUE. And I said to him, no, because you don't need to come in our backyard. U of I doesn't have to come in our backyard. That'd just be crazy. And I wasn't even thinking about it for me. Again, this was, I think, back in 2019. He might have been thinking out before then, but I was like, no, don't do it around our backyard. We don't need you here. But anyway, they created it, and we talked about it, and I thought about it. At that time, the thought was in my mind, like, that would be kind of fun. Regional rep, getting back to the basics. I can stay in a community I live in. We're family, and I'm close to a lot of, family reasons. You got to make that decision for that as well. That was going to be something neat. Well, when they went to go post this position, it was around March of 20. Well, we all know what happened in March of 20. Yeah, so that just put it on hold, this position here at U of I, and then they brought it back in 22, and it went quickly. He reached out and he said, hey, I think you should apply for this. It's an opportunity. By that time, a lot had happened again in COVID, and it was really like something that allowed me to think about my role and what I wanted to do. I didn't want to leave SIUE. I still love it. It's a great place. It's my alma mater, one of my alma mater. So, but I was ready to consider this opportunity. Again, long story short, they gave me the opportunity, went through the interview process, got offered the position, thought about it, was able to make this decision, knowing that, again, I'm not the director now. I'm not in charge of the office, but I'm a contributor is what I call it, but very important person who's going to help them to meet goals. But yet I'm not in those spaces of leading it, strategy, and all that. So it was a great opportunity, and something that, did I ever want to move up to the VP levels and enrollment management levels that I know you and the director levels you all are in? It crossed my mind. But then when I had this chance, and having done college admissions for 30 years, I thought, what a great way and great opportunity to finish my college career, because this is my last stop. This is going to be in higher ed. This is what I want to do. Now, I have no end date in mind. I love this. As long as they want to work with me at U of I and keep me, I'm here because I'm enjoying it a lot.
I think about this a lot with this, Todd, and I'll give you some praise here, because I think there's a part of this that I talk to people about, and I use some of your story in this way. At orientation at SIUE, there used to be, and I don't know if there still is, right? There could be a session in which you would talk to parents, and you would go and you'd share your journey and share a story about, going to college and your experience. And it had some humor in it, but it also had some emotion in it. So people were laughing and people were crying, and it was all this. But that's a great story in itself. But the thing I always remember is what it did to you. Like, you loved giving that presentation. You loved the opportunity to interact with families and students. And that was the glow that just was so special. And that was the moment that was just so special in those timeframes of the year. And then it was almost as if in certain roles, and not just, we all have this thing in our roles where we would say, this is the worst part, this is that. You had to kind of drudge through other things sometimes, whether it was a difficult supervision thing or a difficult thing. And so I just want to say, I think some moral of the story, right, is that when you know what those things are that turn your light on, right, that gets you to that point, being able to find a way to embrace that is pretty special.
Absolutely. Kevin, thank you for bringing up the presentation. Yeah, orientation. That was one of my favorite things. I looked forward to it. It was towards the end of the day, and it was the end of our program, and I spoke to the parents, and it was an awesome opportunity. I always kept thinking, I hope I'm entertaining to them, because they have been through a day and a half of programming, and the last thing they want is really just to be done. And to hear this older guy come on stage and talk about it. It was a lot of fun. And I really fed off the audience. And when they would talk about how it just helped or resonated, that was a story. And I talk a lot about my parents in that presentation and all in fun. But literally, we were all first gen. I was first gen, my parents going through it. We made some fun mistakes and made some, if you want to call them that, we just did. We had some fun discussions. I call those discussions, but it was great to talk about it. And I'd always kid my mom. I said, I'm going to bring you here so they can see you. So when I talk about you, they can see you. And she always said, one day I'm just going to show up. And she never did it because I knew she wouldn't. My mom's very much an introvert, but it was awesome. But Kevin, you're right. I enjoyed that. And I feel like I get to do that now every day in this role. And I know it's a grind, and any entry level admissions person out there that's listening to this would probably say, you enjoy doing that every day. And I honestly can say, yes, I do, but I get it. Towards the end of travel season, let me tell you, I am ready to be done. Yeah. Because you have said the same thing over and over. You have driven many miles. You have flown many miles wherever your travel territory takes you. You have packed a luggage. You have brochures in your trunk. You have spoke to hundreds of students and families, and it's exhausting. But I get so energized by it that I get to go out and help families. And the thing I tell families is my job is not to tell you where to go to school. My job is to tell you about the institution I work for, but my job is to help you out in that process. And then you get the awesome decision to make the decision of where you want to go. That's your choice. I just hopefully played a role in that. So when it comes time, you have everything in front of you to make a good decision. And that's the fun part of my job, because some people say, well, what would you do? Where would you go? And I said, my mind may be different than yours. So you got to make that tough. I never make that decision for them. Sometimes we'll have tough discussions about cost and money. And I had those when I was 17 or 18 too. You had to really make a good informed decision, but it's an awesome opportunity that I have to do what I'm doing and to kind of, as I say, get back to the basics as far as what my career is. And I know there's others out there who have done it, because I've talked to a few that I've known through my professional involvement, that, we always say there should be a group of us that said we had the opportunity to lead an institution as director or some space. And now we're doing this entry level work that is just as crucial as that director role. Yeah,
I love that. And I had a couple of thoughts. Kevin got in there before I did, but yeah, you did it. You did it. You did it. But here's what I would say, Todd. I think the other value, right? Each of us, I was thinking about this as you were responding to this question. Each of us have been at about 3 or 4 different places. And I'm always humbled by how much I've learned in each of those spaces. And you talked about speaking positively about most of the spaces where you've worked. And I can say the same thing. All of my experiences have kind of informed who I am right at this moment. And I think, even as Kevin's talked about you moving into maybe a role that's more student facing and maybe doesn't make director-like decisions, having all of that experience makes you better in the role that you're currently serving. And I think we should acknowledge that. And, we talked to some guests who've been at the same place their entire career, and they've found ways to gain experiences even within that same space. But I do think that it's important to acknowledge that everything we've done really informs who we are in that moment. And so that's the first thing I really just wanted to respond to that. And hearing you talk about your story and how passionate you are about the work really, I think, speaks to all of that. But the second piece is to kind of move to then how you're using that experience to kind of help in the admissions process. And so thinking about that story and in all the spaces where you've been, what's the biggest challenge you see students and families facing in the admissions process? And how can institutions better address that?
Oh, gosh. I think there's just the challenges in this space are, I think, for students and families there's a lot. I think it's knowing about the college admissions process. There are definitely students and families that have a lot of resources available to them to assist in that role and what to do and all that. But there are also students, and I work with a lot of these now, and that's part of my role at U of I, is that they don't know what to ask. They don't know what to do. That's being the students and families. And so just beginning the application process, working with that to how do I go about applying for scholarships and aid? So I think part of the challenge, though, is understanding the higher education cost. That sounds cliche, and I think that's a big challenge. But then also going about the process to apply and understanding the process to applying and what their opportunities are. So for instance, with me, I talk a lot with those students and families now that they may want to go into a certain program or major, but let's just say engineering. I speak a lot about engineering and I speak a lot about the health sciences, but they are struggling with math. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about your career, because there are opportunities out there that you can do, but there are going to be some schools that if you're struggling with math, you may not get in, because that's what we're going to look at for your grades. But there might be another opportunity, another program for you that you may be a good fit for, that even if you're struggling with math. So I love that I get to talk a lot about what they've done, where they might want to go, and then maybe some new opportunities for them. And that's, again, part of my role that I get to do now. So I think, though, getting back to your question, the cost for the families and getting over that at the institution I'm at now, it's very different than any other institution I've been at before. It's selectivity. It's like I can't even get in to U of I. Yeah. I don't think I have the scores, the GPA. So it's talking through them with them and saying, okay, well, what have you done? Okay, well, you might have an opportunity, because I think what they may think of U of I is just at the top. You got to be that number one. You got to have done everything. And that may not be the case for programs they're applying for. So we talk a lot about that. But then in my other institutions where I've been at, it's really assisting them with just that whole application process, not making that a burden, and then letting them know there might be aid out there. Going back to my story when I said my family threw away my college application because it cost too much, I shared a lot with families to say, don't rule that out now. It may come down to that cost when you have to make that decision. But right now, if that's a place you want to go and you think it might be possible, apply. If you have to rule it out later because you have great options in front of you that are going to be more economically feasible, do that. But don't rule that out until then, because you never know. And I feel like the places that I have worked at have given students that chance. In particular, when I was at SIUE, I was at St. Louis U and at Quincy. There were many opportunities for students to say, okay, here's what we can do for you, merit-based and need-based, that may make this tuition more affordable. And two of those places, I've worked at two publics, one now and one prior, but then two privates. And with privates, it may be the opportunity that the aid is there for you. You just never know. So don't rule it out because you see the initial sticker cost. So I think that the financial aid, again, the cost of it, the application process, just applying to colleges, and then the outcomes, I think, is what's going to happen afterwards. There's a lot of talk about higher ed and the value of higher education, and I think it's extremely valuable. Again, my parents, who never went to college, still believe in that. Now, all of our siblings were grown like myself and families and out of college, but they encouraged it if that's what we wanted to do, because any type of education, whatever it might be, was going to be helpful in your career. And again, these are two individuals who never went to school, but they understood the value of education and continuing that. And so I think helping families to know that the higher education is going to benefit them in some form, some way, whatever you might do, whatever pathway you take. So that's how I think those are the things that I see, again, on that front line is helping those families through those processes with application and aid.
It's great.
I think that one of the things you talk about, I think, resonates no matter what field you're in. And as we're working with students, or even as we're working with staff that may be on our teams, one of these things that occurs is people that assume that the door's closed before they ever try to even open it. And I think what you said there is pretty poignant when you look at it and say, hey, try to open the door. Like, see if you walk through what that might feel like. And that's just such a powerful message, and good for you and good for the students that you're working with and those families to hear that walking through. I'm going to shift here a little bit to some of the things with professional development. And again, I think this is a praise point. I think that some of the things that you did in your career, but then also with your teams from a professional development standpoint are just standout. You know, you really, I think you embraced taking care of your team because of all the hard work that they were having to do. But I think that you also owned your own professional development. And so when you look at that, how do you really encourage new professionals to get involved and grow their leadership and service and to try to get better in their own professional careers? And how do you still do that now, even though your roles have shifted?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love this. Professional development opportunities for me. I was blessed. I was so fortunate and the opportunities that were given to me. And I will look back to my time when I started. I traveled Chicago my first few years for Quincy, my alma mater for my undergrad. And I'd never been to Chicago before, never been to the city of Chicago. And high school counselors would welcome me. And never forget, there was one individual at a large public school up in the Chicago suburbs, Sue was her name. And I met her at a summer training event that Quincy sent me to learn about the admissions role. And she said to me, why don't you come up before your travel season and I will go through all the high schools with you and tell you a little bit about each and what to expect. That was awesome. And I won't forget that she did that for me, this small college, this guy that had never done admissions. She invited me up to her school and went over everything, and it was very helpful. And she was president of IACAC, Illinois Association of College Admission Counseling, at the time. So it was very intimidating for me as well to be like, oh my gosh, the president's coming up, or, I got my best, I got everything the best forward, making sure that, all this is going well. And it was just awesome. And I'll never forget that. I don't know what day I did that. It was obviously after I started in June of 92, but it was so helpful. And as I think about what I've done over my career, I want to be like that as well. I really love that we have individuals that are interested in our professions, whether they be in admissions or any aspect of enrollment management, retention, the advising area. I think it's very vital that we have those individuals that want to get into this profession and want to do that. And professional development is so important, not only to help you out and your institution out, but I also think personally it helps you to grow. You're put in spaces where you get the opportunity to learn more about yourself. And I feel like that's happened to me. I had the chance to serve as MOACAC, Missouri Association of College Admission Counseling president, and Illinois Association of College Admission president. That was awesome. Now, that was 6 years of a lot of work. Let me just say this right now, that it's 6 years of intense work, and I did it all while I was director. So at the institutions that I was at, SIUE, I did the role. I came in as president of Missouri, and I also did Illinois. And then when you're involved, you get involved nationally. So you'll get to attend opportunities with NACAC. And so that was just awesome. And I look back on it now and think, wow, I would not probably be where I'm at or be the person I am without all those opportunities. Again, you all have done leadership roles, so I know I'm talking, you all know what it is, but it's a lot of work. When you say yes, it's a lot of work that you have to do. And but I look back on it and I'd be like, I'm glad I did it because it's good. So I always encourage our staff, say yes to a committee volunteer. Start out there.
Yes.
you don't have to be in a leadership position right away. You don't ever have to do a leadership position if you don't want to. But if you're doing that committee work, it's just as important. It's like being a staff member. The person that answers the phone in my office, I always said, was the most important person, because if you call in and you don't get a good greeting, it could be everything. So they're just as important as me sitting in the director chair at SIUE when I had that opportunity to do that. And so you got to make sure, again, coming back to part of the question, how you treat the staff. I want them to know that, your role is just as vital to this office. If it wasn't, why would we need it then? So it's very vital. And but then how can I help you to professionally develop? Maybe you want to move up in your career. I always forget, I always say this. I had staff that would come in and I feel like, okay, missions is the training ground. And then I would have staff, and I see it now in my role at U of I too. We have our young staff come in. The next step, what do they want to do? Advising, which is so essential. I'm talking to the doers of advising here and people listening. And I think advising is like the most essential thing at the university, because I always say admissions, we work with them a year or two. Maybe they start junior year. Some will start earlier than that. Great. But you really start to build that relationship senior year. So you work with them for a year and then they enter. Okay. And that begins at orientation or registration programs. Admissions is still a little bit involved, but then literally come first day of classes or a little bit before that, they're turned over to the advisors for 4 years or more. And so we get to work with them for 1 year, but then we get to say, okay, next. And I kind of like that about admissions. But then I think, oh my gosh, these advisors are working with them for 4 years. And these are great students with a lot of questions, but that's a lot. And I always felt like, oh my gosh, if I look back, I had a great advisor, and I don't know how the role was back in the 80s when I was entering college. Advising's changed a lot over many years. But I even had a great advisor that helped me out along my pathway to find out my appropriate major. And that really guided me well. And so I think about how they are so important. But I have staff in admissions that will say, I want to do this, but then I would like to aspire to be that advisor. So we're training them. And I'm like, well, if you do admissions, you're going to be doing a lot because you have to know everything. And then you're going to maybe lead into other areas of student affairs type work or institutional work that are going to open up many doors. So again, coming back to professional development, I say volunteer. If professional development maybe is not the state association or professional association, maybe it's getting involved on campus. Say yes to helping out another office, because you may learn something and say, I want to do that. And I want to get involved in that. And those doors will start to open. So I'm just a big promoter, and I always have been. I never forget in a few years that there were budget crunches in the state. There's going to be I feel like there's always going to be those times, and they say, well, we got to cut professional development. I'm like, oh gosh, I don't like that. That's just what we have to do. I have to relay that message. But then I thought, okay, how can the staff get involved on campus and help other offices? Because again, I view that as professional development. You're developing yourself that may open up doors for new careers. Not that I wanted them to leave admissions, but give them that opportunity to say, there's my next step, that step I want to take to whatever that role might be. So I'm a big advocate of professional development. Always, I've had doors open for me and wonderful opportunities, and I really want to be that example. So I just share my story with the new staff at U of I now, where I work. They'll ask questions. How did you get involved? And I say, I don't know how I got elected or how I got asked, but here's what I did along the way. Yeah. And I think that led to it.
Yeah.
Todd, the answer is people liked you. And so that's what you tell them. You say, I got elected because people liked me and they voted for me. You don't tell them if you're the only person that ran.
No, it was single slated. It was single slated. So just
look, one vote. I do think, right, though, like it's creating a culture of yes, right? Like this idea that the answer sometimes is yes, even when it's scary. Say yes, right? Even when it might, you might be concerned about the amount of time it's going to take. Say yes, right? Like I've not had in my career any kind of professional development or service where I said, no, I don't think I'm going to do that. And maybe you regret some of the time that it takes to do that. But I think when you start from that basic default response is, yes, this sounds interesting, I'm going to give this a go, or I'm going to try this. I think especially for new professionals, it really is the right approach, right? Is how can I contribute? What can I learn from this experience? Certainly, I need to balance time and responsibilities. But if no is always the answer, it's that narrow focus, narrow impact. If I say no and just focus on the specific job responsibilities, or don't feel like I can contribute in other ways, then the impact is going to be less as well. So it's such a poignant response, Todd. I really resonated with everything that you were saying there.
Yeah, say yes. I love that you mentioned, because that was always the theme that when we would go and, and part of your role with an association when you're in president, you move on to past president, you have to pick that next round of leadership, those candidates that are going to run for leadership. And I'd always say yes if you can. And there's one individual I'll never forget in IACC that kind of was her theme for presidential year, was Annie. She would always say, I said yes, and I encourage others. And she was a positive role model for anybody that got into the profession or that had been in it for a long time like myself. She was just that energy and enthusiasm. And she said her theme was say yes, and find that balance, having sure of the balance, but
absolutely,
say yes, take advantage of that opportunity to get involved. And professional development is just a wonderful opportunity in our profession, I feel like. And again, it's not only helping the institution out in the office because you're learning more about what's going on, but it's helping yourself out. And again, giving you opportunities that, again, I didn't think I would get because just by getting involved. I feel like many times my roles at SLU were developed because I was putting leadership positions in a professional development organization, leading a committee, that helped me out to be like, okay, I think I'm ready for management in the office. And because I've dealt with this situation, and that just continued on to where when the opportunity arose to apply for a director's job, that was scary. I was like, I don't think I could do this. I don't know all the ins and outs of a director's job. But then when I applied and had the opportunity to interview, and I was like, maybe I could. And so if offered, I'll consider this. And then I was able to do that for 20 years at a regional public institution that is my alma mater. And it was just wonderful. And then the work with the people, though, I never saw that as a benefit. Yes, there are times in management that I'm like, don't want to do any more of that. But most of the time, yes, I've been there, Kevin. I've been there, Kevin. Yeah. But there most of the time it was great, and I enjoyed that and that opportunity to do that. And now I'm hope I can do that. I hope I can be that employee that allows my boss, and because I have a wonderful boss right now, a wonderful boss that is just allows for that. But I also say I just really appreciate how she leads and what she does. But I hope I can be the employee to say, how can I help you out from what I've done in my lifetime of a missions career? Any advice? And so it's a great relationship I currently have, and I couldn't be more happy with that. I think that's another part of it is when you work with great people and surround yourself with good bosses, and I've had great bosses over my career, that adds to what I do and what I enjoy.
It's great.
The fun of this, right, is that we haven't got to the fun questions yet, and so we need to. So now that you're traveling more and you're out and about, what is, like, after a long week on the road, maybe that go-to comfort food that you need to have?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So go-to comfort food. It has changed over time, but right now, if I could come home and just snack, I would do that. But I can't, because when you get older, and you all will find this out later because I'm there now, you can look at food and it's just gonna grow on you. So
you just called Brody young, and I don't know how I feel about it.
Well, you all are. You both are. So no, you are. So, but then I come home. So my go-to food is I like anything Italian, but I also I've acquired a taste for a lot of seafood, salmon, mahi-mahi. So if I can have a nice meal and just sit down and have that one drink. Oh, come on now. And you just, yes, it's very good. Not 10 years ago, I would never have ate it probably, but now I'm like, yep. So I don't know, but if I can do that, that's my go-to happy meal. Now, yeah,
that's the anti-donut response. I'm not sure we can be friends anymore, Todd.
Like, well, I love donuts. So I heard that conversation. I heard donuts. I wrote that. Do not fill those donuts up. No, sprinkle.
Oh, see,
we're at war now. We're at war now.
It's a good thing we only have a little bit left.
I could snack, but give me anything chocolate too. Dark chocolate. That's it. So that's my go-to. I don't know. That's what I do after a long week of visits.
Dark chocolate. That's an acceptable response. Salmon is not an acceptable response. So if you weren't in admissions, Todd, what would your career? What would be like a dream job?
Okay, so I my degree's in management, and I always thought, what I want to work in hospitality management. That was what I thought I was going to do. When I went to that career counselor, I'll never forget, okay, maybe hotel management, because I thought that'd be kind of cool and fun. I have shifted because I love sports, and I get to oversee an admission review committee now. My current role here at U of I, that one of the majors I oversee is sport management. And if I could go back and, because I'm not an athlete. I can pretend to be. I like to be active, but I am no. I was the manager of my high school basketball team, so I'll never forget this. I'll share this story. This is really dating me. So back when everybody as a freshman thought they could play basketball, and I grew up in a town here in Illinois that is basketball crazy. We didn't have football, so everybody went out for basketball. I think there were 20 plus kids that went out for basketball, and you can't have 20 kids on a team. You can, but you're going to be 10 that are never going to play.
That's right.
So I'll never forget freshman year playing basketball, and the coach comes up and he says, well, I think we're going to move you up to varsity. Now, I never played, y'all. If there was a 30-point lead and 2 seconds left, yes, I came in. And he said, we're going to move you to varsity. I'm like, huh? He said, we want you to be our manager. And I did that. I did the manager thing, and I loved it. And so who would have thought back then? I thought, I wish I would have known about the degree of sport management, because I would have loved to have gone to a college, to got involved in college athletics, to work at like that. If there was such a thing as like a director of operations type thing, got that experience, and who knows where that would have taken me, because I love being in the sport world, because I really enjoy that. I just can't play. So that's what I would do. And so it is awesome that I get to talk about sport management. Because I have a student comes up and said, can you tell me more about this major? I'm like, yes, we could talk forever, because I love it.
That's so great.
So that'd be my degree. I don't know where it would have taken me, but that's the other career I would have done.
All right, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but this is maybe the most important answer you're going to provide for those folks that listen to this from hometowns or family. If you were going to choose shoes to wear the rest of your life, would they be tennis shoes or maybe some wooden shoes?
Kevin, I love it. Yes, let's bring in my rap. Wooden shoes is the answer.
Wooden shoes, yes.
Now let me explain that, you all.
Yes, you have to.
I have to. That's my small hometown. I love where I'm from, Teutopolis, Illinois. About 2,000 people. It's grown to maybe now, but it's a basketball crazy town, and our nickname, we're called the Wooden Shoes, and it's just unique. Yeah, it's fierce. No mascot, there's no shoe dressed up roaming around the court like there might be a cougar, or there's no mascot. It's just a pair of wooden shoes sitting in a case. That's what you want to call it. But it's so unique, and that's what I love about it. I've embraced it, and everywhere I go, and all the teams that I get to work with, and people, they always get a little wooden shoe I send them with my hometown on them, and it's just the case. So wooden shoes is what I would wear. I have to share this story though if I can, because in our town, small town, because I'm a big Cardinal fan, as you all mentioned too. Your Cubs are in high school, or Bears are in high school, but you start out like a Cubs, right? Yeah. You grow from a Cub to a Bear, right? So you do that. We do the same thing in my hometown. You finish as a wooden shoe or a shoe, but in grade school, you're known as the booties.
The booties.
This is a true story. You start out as a booty and you grow up to be a shoe.
I don't even know what to do with that one.
I don't know.
Dream big, right? I mean, if the goal is to be a shoe, I guess you got to start as a booty.
And there are a bunch of people listening going, this is the most craziest thing I've ever heard, because it's so true. We're the only one in the entire United States nicknamed the wooden shoes. And in Illinois, if you don't know, Illinois has some mascot names that are just unique. Because when we went to the state tournament, remember I mentioned I didn't get to play. I moved up. So my sophomore year, I was the only sophomore in my high school at that time that won a state championship. And because we won it that year, we went 33-0. But in the semifinals at the Assembly Hall, now State Farm Center on the campus of U of I, we played a team from Hoopeston, East Lynn, Illinois. And they were nicknamed the Corn Jerkers. So it was the Corn Jerkers versus the Wooden Shoes, only in Illinois.
Only.
I think we got to move to lightning round because
after that there's nowhere else to go. All right, Todd, lightning round questions here.
Oh, this makes me nervous.
This will be an easy one. Beach, mountain, or lake?
Oh, beach.
Okay.
Favorite Illinois city to recruit in? I can't say Teutopolis. That's my hometown, but I Southern Illinois. It's not a city, but I'll say the Marion, Illinois area. I really enjoy going down there.
Favorite Cardinal moment? It's got to be fast.
Oh, David Freese, 2011, Game 6. It's etched in my memory. I will never forget that. I was exhausted after that game and said, we will win the next day. There's no doubt in my mind after that game we would win, and we did.
I'm with you.
You were at that game.
Yes, I was at. I was so fortunate. I got to go to. I've been to World Series games 1 and 2, 6 and 7, and 3, 4, and 5. And I've been to because we hosted it, opened it up in that year with 6 and 7 and 1 and 2, and then when we previously were at 06 when we played Detroit, I got to go to 3, 4, and 5. Awesome.
That's incredible. That's amazing.
I know.
Coffee, tea, or soda?
Coffee.
Okay.
All right. So one word colleagues would use to describe your leadership.
I hope they would say thoughtful, caring. I hope.
Go-to karaoke song, Todd. Come on.
Oh, now I don't sing, but if I had to, and I know this has been shared on a previous one, but when I heard it, I'm like, come on now. Hold On by Wilson Phillips.
Oh.
I know you talked about this. I love that song. I just do, because in particular, I think it should be the theme for the Cardinals this year and moving forward in the next 20 years.
Kevin, what would your song be?
Oh, I love singing some country, right? Like if I find a good Garth Brooks song, I'm going with it because, I was a vocal music major, and then they said you don't get to sing Garth Brooks, and I said I'm not a vocal music major anymore. So it's those type of things.
I didn't know that about you.
You didn't know I thrift, and now you don't know about this. I mean, come on.
Killers, Mr. Brightside for me.
Yeah, I figured there'd be something poppy.
Just be loud. If you're going to be bad, be loud. That's the way I think about it.
Well, Todd, we are running short on time, but it has been an absolute pleasure having you on today to talk about your journey, your career, experience, leadership, all things.
Yeah. Where did the hour go or so? Wow. This has just been awesome and wonderful. And I just can't thank you enough for inviting me on. I love the opportunity to share part of my story, but then I look forward to hearing other stories through this podcast. And this, again, this is one pickup meeting that I really look forward to.
Very good. Thanks so much, Todd.
Thank you all.
Yeah, we've got our blurb now. Gosh darn, he's
right.
schlepping for us.
Listen, he could be one of our writers. People have said this. And if you see some of the comments on our LinkedIn post, they're like, oh, yeah, I was laughing so hard during this period of time. We have writers. We're actually not that funny. We've got a paid staff that we just have feed us information throughout. I think that's what we've really come to.
Yeah, Kat and Tony.
That's probably true. Our spouses are making us better.
Good. I like that. You did real good there, Kevin. Absolutely.
See what's happening there? All
yeah.
right. So what are some of your takeaways here today?
I mean, Todd's response about professional development, right? That yes approach to me is really sticking in my mind. And I feel like in my career, when I've said yes to hard things, it's made all the difference. And I just believe that when we think about professional development, make ourselves better in our role, right? Sometimes it means taking on an additional responsibility or learning a new skill or talking and making connections to someone that could be intimidating to interact with. I think yes, right? Sometimes just saying yes is the right answer.
How about you? And thinking about that journey in the context of what Todd was talking about, if I hadn't said yes, how different my experience would have been professionally in so many ways that just really now give me a lot of fuel, a lot of energy, a lot of purpose. And if I hadn't said yes, how I think, man, that there just would have been such a missed opportunity. So that real value in saying yes, I thought was a great takeaway.
The other thing too, right? Like Todd's story is really fascinating. And I think sometimes we underestimate the power of our own personal story as it relates to understanding the work that we're currently doing and the challenges that we face, not just in at our institutions, but also within higher ed, right? So to me, it's a reminder of remembering what your experience was can really inform the way that you want to lead and work. That was the other big piece for me.
Yeah. So what is your takeaway as we move to conclude things today?
You know, we always talk about one good thing on the phone, Kevin, and like just in my personal life, I think I'm really excited. Last night, Kat and I, we've been doing this now for a few months, right? This trivia night, kind of a date night in midweek. We go to a local establishment that's in walking distance of our house. We play trivia every Wednesday night. Our goal is to not finish last and to not fight. And we've been mostly successful. And last night we had one of our best nights ever. Like, I think we finished just a few points out of second place. It's just the two of us. We're usually playing against teams of 5 or 6, and we have a ton of fun. We usually go out to dinner, just chat about the day, and then hit trivia. We're getting pretty good at it.
That's good.
How about you? What's the one good thing?
You know, we are, for listeners, we're several weeks into doing the podcast, and having a chance to connect with people from our careers has just been an outstanding experience. You know, I think when we talked about this in episode 1 of, doing this pickup meeting, and it kind of moves from some of our phone calls that we have and some of the fun that we have within that. But now, getting to do some of the conversations and getting to really just enjoy the time that we have with the guests that we bring on and reflect on the past and reflect on the journey has just been one of these moments that throughout the days that we've recorded, I just feel better about my existence. I feel better about what we're doing. Yeah. And it's a good energy that is added to our day because we started this in the fall, during a very busy time in our careers, just to have that real positive experience that's happening on the day-to-day basis is just been a real nice surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it does take off the pressure a little bit. I know that you and I spend a lot of time talking about, can we be better? And how do we get, really good at this? And, we're just 4 or 5 episodes into the podcast. And when you have these conversations, I think you remember we started this for us, and that's really the fun part, right? Is getting to interact with people that we really cared about, that have had an influence on our careers. So yeah, that's a great way to end the show today, man.
But right. I will say, right, like as you're wrapping things up, listen, I think that we have to plug ourselves a little bit here. So I'll just say, hey folks, don't forget to give us a good rating wherever you listen to your podcast.
Yeah.
And leave a positive comment. We would love to hear from you. I will say that even hearing from the people that we don't know that show up on, I'm on LinkedIn, various other social media feeds where they say, hey, this is one of the best listens that I have all week. And I can't tell you how much that means when we hear those things. So thank you for those folks that are sharing it.
Absolutely. All right, friends, that's it for this edition of the Pickup Meeting. We hope all your regular meetings are as productive and fun as we had today. Until next time, do good, achieve, be nice, and we'll see you on the flip side.